You've hit play on the Screen Companion, an eclectic mix of film and TV recommendations. This episode, 3 shows that I have chosen episodes from specifically to get Max wet. He might feel an emotion or two. Today we're talking Little House on the Prairie, Homicide, Life on the Street, and Lost. Starting with Little House on the Prairie, that tells the story of the Ingalls family living out on the prairie in post-Civil War Minnesota. They become members of the town of Walnut Grove, where every week some new problem arises that always gets solved through the power of family and faith. In the episode The Family Tree, a genealogy project at school prompts adopted son Albert to ask Pa, Charles Ingalls, to submit the paperwork to make it legal. But then all heck breaks loose when Albert's birth father shows up wanting to use Albert purely as free farm labor. Max, do you have any prior knowledge or bias toward the show coming into this?
All I knew about the Little House on Prairie was that it was a show on PBS, because I guess it just played it on reruns like Hawaiian Five-0. Honestly, my expectations was, it's just literally a house out in the middle of nowhere, and these people are just trying to survive. Not quite what I expected. I did expect it to be worse than other shows I've watched like Mr. Rogers and Thomas the Tank Engine.
Were you pleasantly surprised, Max?
There was a bit more than what I was expecting. It's actually given me a little bit more interest into the show. I won't turn my nose up to it like I used to.
Good, because my dad listens to the show. He is a staunch non-fan of Little House.
He's a hater?
He opposes it greatly.
He's a hater.
He makes fun of me for liking it.
It is weird that you like it, Frank. I'm going to be honest.
I discovered this only within the last year.
Oh, okay.
So I'm slowly getting into the seasons. I haven't watched all of it. Overall, I'm a fan. John, what do you think of family dramas? Do you see them in a good light? Does it have merit on its own without some larger genre supporting it, like sci-fi or maybe crime drama?
In general, I think family drama is one of the lowest forms of drama.
Okay. Dad, is that you?
No, I'm going to speak highly of Little House on the Prairie. This is the exception, not the rule. Because all I think of is just every soap opera on television. Every daytime soap is strictly just family drama. Whereas every good sitcom, they play it for comedy. So I don't think family problems play too well as just straight drama.
Max, being dropped into this episode from the 6th season, does it stand on its own without watching previous episodes? Could you follow it without fully knowing the characters and where they come from?
I was able to follow it for the most part. I did stumble a little bit early on when they initially introduced some of the characters, and I'm just trying to figure out, wait, what's this kid's beef? Why is he so moody and upset? Oh, okay. They explain it halfway through. Alright, makes sense. Just know that it'll be a little tricky at first.
So, you didn't realize what was going on with Albert in the first act when Nellie and some of the other kids in class were talking about him being an orphan?
I figured it out right then and there, but initially I had no context about anyone else, and I was just wondering, why is this kid already bummed out? Oh, because he's a bastard.
Yeah, that mean girl calls him a bastard, too, right out of the gate. That strong-jawed mean girl.
I was wondering about that, because she looked a little too butch to be like a Southern Belle. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, it looked like she could take one on the chin during a boxing fight.
You mean she could kick your ass?
Yeah, she definitely, probably not now, because, I don't know, she's probably only 10 or 20 years older than me.
I think she could still take you today.
Yeah, I think she could still take me.
Like I said at the start, all of today's episodes were chosen to make Max, who is a family man, feel some emotions. And since you are our lab rat, Max, you're a father, you're a son, you're a husband, I picked the family tree to connect with you as a son. Or did you find you identified more with Charles Ingalls, the Pa?
A bit more with the Pa. I wasn't really expecting to feel anything. I probably don't feel as much even to this point. I did feel a little something in my heart.
Oh, okay.
Because it did hit a little close to home at one point.
Would you say you were touched by an angel?
We don't talk about that.
You mean, did Max feel like he was on the highway to heaven?
The highway to heaven. Ah, no, I knew I screwed it up.
Don't worry, I'll keep that screw up in.
Yay! Yeah, people need to know I'm not perfect.
But you're damn close.
So close.
So all the episodes we're going to talk about, I counted various moments, not necessarily where I felt emotion, but emotional bear traps where you might have felt something. As I go down this list, let me know if it hit you. Not necessarily made you cry or anything, but just that you really felt the moment. First one I got is Albert asks Charles to adopt him, feeling like the rest of the world needs a document to prove their family.
Did not feel a thing, did not care about that.
Wow. Heartless bastard.
Did you feel something, John?
I kinda did. My two older brothers are technically half-brothers, and they're adopted by my dad. So.
Come on, you want to tell me what's bothering you, son?
I'm not your son. Not really.
What are you talking about?
Well, it's you and Ma and your son. Kids at school call me Albert Ingalls. I'm even registered as Albert Ingalls. But deep down in my heart, I know I'm not. I can't really make anybody else believe it either.
Well, I don't care what anybody else believes. You live in our house, we love you, you're part of our family.
But it's not the same. Using a name doesn't make it legal. If only you could adopt me, then everything would be fine. I know when I asked you if I could call you Pa, you seemed pleased. If you think this might be asking too much.
You know, when you asked if you could call me Pa, and you took my name, I just figured that was enough. That's my fault for not thinking. It's my fault. What do you say we do something about that starting tomorrow, huh?
Thank you. Thank you. Pa.
Second one, Charles finds out Albert's biological parent, Mr. Quinn, has laid claim to Albert and must go tell the boy at the creek.
You mean when he was talking with his wife, or when he was talking with his son? The fake son, I mean.
Oh, wow. Calling him a fake son already, damn.
Just call him bastard for the rest of the episode. Be done with it.
Albert the bastard. I'm counting that whole scene where it starts in the barn talking to his wife, and then he goes and talks to Albert at the creek.
Talking with a wife? No. Talking with his soon-to-be former son? Kind of, yeah. I started feeling a little something.
There's got to be a better way to put that.
And that thing you felt, was it just hunger because it was lunchtime?
I don't know, this is well close to dinner time.
How about you, John?
Yeah, I did feel something. I get that. Random bastards, being, in this case, the biological father, come in and ruin everything. I kind of felt that.
I find bastard to be such a funny term, but this episode made me rethink that.
Because they're using it in the most technical sense.
Yeah, well, and when it's 19th century, might as well be the C word.
Really. We can only say one of those two words.
The third moment, Albert says goodbye to his sister Laura before heading out to go with Mr. Quinn.
I did not care for that moment. I felt like that was too much of a transplant moment.
What do you mean?
It's one thing to like have the father-son moment where they're like, oh, I gotta give you up, boy. Oh, I wish I could keep you. But then have it between the siblings, I don't know. Maybe it's because I don't have that deep, hard connection with my siblings where we don't express ourselves, but we kind of know it's there. Maybe that's why I felt that way, where it's like, yeah, I don't care about this.
Wait a second, Max, wait a second. Now, I understand, as far as I know, you didn't have the most loving childhood. But suppose you were 10, 12 years old, and for whatever reason, your family had to give you up. You're saying you wouldn't really care to have a farewell with your brothers?
It'd probably be more of a, oh well, I don't know. Maybe I'll see you later.
More like the scene from Dumb and Dumber. It's just like, well, see you later.
Pretty much.
More like Abel asks you, hey, can I have your N64? All right.
I guess. They don't have plugins where I'm going.
Well, geez, I didn't realize, John, you'd need to be the heart of this episode.
Yeah.
Did you feel anything during that moment? Come on.
Yeah, I did. I have siblings, and they hate me with a passion, but if I never saw them again, I'd give them a heartfelt goodbye.
Over 80 episodes of The Screen Companion. Listen to the show on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and more. Drop us a line via thescreencompanion@gmail.com or join the Facebook group. Tell us your favorite guests and what topics we should cover next. Further support the host by going on Amazon.com and picking up his 2 sci-fi novels, Self-Recognition and Traversal, The Weight of Worlds, available in digital and print editions. The fourth moment is Albert pretending to be blind in order to make Mr. Quinn rethink wanting to take the kid away from the Ingalls. Max, tell me you felt something.
I felt pride at that moment. It's like, yes! Go, boy, go, do your thing! You knew what you were gonna do, I knew it!
Because if the kid's blind, he no longer has value as a farmhand.
Yeah, but I think in that scene, when he's telling the boy he can stay with the Ingalls, and it's just the two of them, not sad about losing his son, but that he at least feels like a jerk. He understands, he sees himself, you know, he knows what he's doing and why he's saying Albert can stay behind. That always gets me. I definitely enjoyed that moment, because I think Albert, too, at the end of that scene, yeah, he gets what he wants. He tricked his biological father into letting him stay. I also think when the camera holds on him, there's a little tinge of sadness that he knows. Doesn't he ask Mr. Quinn for a hug?
Yes.
So he's saying goodbye to him.
Yeah, he's saying goodbye. He gives him the hug. If Mr. Quinn was smarter, he'd realize the kid wasn't blind.
And then, Max, did you notice right after that, when Charles finds out that he can keep Albert, how Charles runs up those stairs? He could just walk up the stairs. He'll get there eventually, but he runs up those stairs because he's just so full of emotion.
Oh yeah, no, I caught that.
It was beautiful. Would you run like that, Max? Or would you go, the kid can wait. He'll find out.
I would probably run at a more easier pace. Like, you know what? My hips are getting a little rough.
He's young. My feet hurt. I'll get there.
John, can you think of anything you'd do to make it a better episode?
The blind thing was almost comical when it happened. So maybe find a better way to play that.
Honestly, I'm surprised the dad didn't even bring it up. It's like, you didn't tell me he was blind. I was waiting for that moment.
He made a joke about the kid never seeing him again.
I think Mr. Quinn was shamed enough in that moment that he wasn't going to bring it up in front of Ingalls or the judge, because then it would telegraph to them that that's why he's letting the boy stay.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I think the main conflict, Mr. Quinn wanting to take Albert away, that doesn't get established until more than halfway into the story. I'd move that up and maybe have Albert say more goodbyes in town. He's ran away before. Perhaps he'll think about doing it again. Might have been interesting.
But then you don't have room for all the water closet drama.
That was a fun little detail. They'll see that in once in a while where, ooh, look at new technologies coming into town. The one that gets drenched in the water closet, she's the blonde girl's mother, and they're the Olsons. Between her, Harriet, and the daughter, Nellie, they are the characters you love to hate on that show. Max, did you thoroughly dislike them?
You mean the little blonde girl?
Yeah, the blonde girl is Harriet's daughter. The lady that wanted the water closet.
I'm surprised a boy didn't try lunge at her.
With a knife.
She does get into fights with the Ingalls children.
Apparently not enough.
And then eventually, from what I understand of it, she and Laura become friends.
Oh, it's like the whole Harry Potter Draco Malfoy thing.
I'll take your word for it. Never got into Harry Potter.
No, as for the mom, you know what? You got what was coming to you. I feel like I've been in this predicament before. Except I had to be nicer about it.
Well, when it happens and that water closet drenches her because Mr. Olson hasn't finished installing it, you can clearly see that the pipe's missing.
She was rushing them.
She doesn't pay attention. She doesn't listen.
It can't take that long to install it. It's like, woman, it takes time.
It's new technology. He's basically building a car at that point, right? He's never seen it before.
I'm no expert on plumbing history, but can we assume that if he's installing the water closet, that means they had to install pipes and dig some space underneath the house for pipes so it could drain somewhere? I'm not sure where that poo goes.
They had to put holes in the wall, pipes throughout the whole place. How does the water even get pumped up to the second floor? That's a better question.
I thought maybe they would refill it themselves.
It was coming out at a rate that doesn't normally get refilled.
Yeah, later in the episode when it was coming down the stairs.
That thing was gushing.
How well do you think the cry moments are handled? Do you think they're earned?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that if I had a bit more of a heart or a bit less of the tism, I probably would have felt a bit more and say, yeah, you know what, this is a good touching episode. For now, I'll just say, it's fine. It makes sense to me. I understand why humans would have emotions over these moments.
I'm bringing back this segment. Rat. Random Asinine Thoughts and Trivia. The oldest Ingalls daughter, Mary, who I think shows up in one scene in this episode, she is blind, so shame on Albert for pretending.
Wait, is she like legitimately blind or just blind for the story?
The character is blind, she goes blind, and halfway through the show to the end of it, she stays blind.
Oh, neat.
That's not what I would say to... Oh, she went blind? Neat. All right.
It's like character development.
Hot damn. Blind girl. All right.
But John, I know you've got some random trivia for us, don't you, buddy?
I had to ask my dad about it. Apparently, my grandmother and Laura Ingalls Wilde had the same grandfather.
Whoa.
Yeah. One of his children was Michael Landon, and his other child, they moved away, I guess. And they had kids in New York, which led to eventually me, I guess. So it's a cousin.
What I'm hearing is you can stake a claim to that little house on the prairie.
No, I don't think I can.
Not with that attitude.
No.
Make a claim to that Little House fortune. Because, hey, it's out on Blu-ray. They made some money off of that.
They shouldn't have put it on Blu-ray. I was watching it on my little fancy high-definition monitor. I could see some of the makeup, and I could see that they try to cover up some stuff on people's faces. That little bastard boy had something on his chin that was, like, sticking out.
You mean acne?
Maybe it was, I don't know. They put some weird putty on his chin to try and make it go away and give him the perfect baby boy face, and it didn't work for me. I was just distracted by it the whole time.
Yeah, I have seen other episodes where, in high definition, you can see the makeup spots, whether it's acne or scars they're trying to cover up. Because it's so well lit all the time. I'm sure you noticed, John, during the night scenes at the Ingalls house, just these pools of light. Where'd the light come from? Did Quentin Tarantino light this?
It's the classic, the light source should not cast a shadow. And I think they had a couple candles that was casting its own shadow against the wall in the background.
I love when they turn off a lantern and somehow it gets brighter after they do. Another light turns on somewhere and you can see it and it's coming from a new direction.
That's God. That's God doing his God's work.
Going into our next show and episode, Homicide, Life on the Street, portrays the lives of Baltimore homicide detectives spending about as much time on the relationships between the officers as it does on the inner city murders. I suppose the central partnership on the show is Tim Bayliss and Frank Pembleton, who happen to be the main cops in Season 4's A Doll's Eyes, where a mall shooting leaves 10-year-old Patrick Garbrick brain dead and his parents struggling with pulling the plug. Max, did you know anything about this show previous to this episode?
I might have caught part of an episode by accident one time when I was watching it late night on Saturday, but that's about it. I had no other context for it besides, oh, maybe this show I shouldn't be watching as a 10-year-old.
It's the same. It was on when I was a kid, and I remember seeing some episodes, and I really liked it. Going back after, The Wire, basically.
A lot of people involved with Homicide were involved with The Wire.
It's not on anything, so if you don't own it, you gotta find it on some random streaming site.
I remember when it was initially on in the 90s, we would be picking something to watch, maybe at a hotel, and of course my dad would win out. We're gonna watch Homicide. Okay. And I thought it was so boring. I would be playing with toys, doing whatever else I could do. And then funny enough, once I came of age, after I'd watched The Wire, I got into Homicide and I loved it. Ended up liking it more than I think my dad ever did.
Yeah, take that.
John, are you a fan of police procedurals? What do you think is the perfect ratio of personal drama to the crime solving?
I'm gonna say this is the golden example. A lot of shows, you watch Law and Order and all those are great shows, I'm a big fan, but it's all just the police part. And then I think you watch the CBS procedurals, and they try to put in more of the family drama stuff, but it's still, mostly police stuff. The show in general is such a good example of mixing it well. Not only are the detectives trying to solve the case, right, but they're struggling emotionally with the concept of it.
It feels like the cops are not only living their lives, but also doing their job at the same time. In other shows, it almost seems like their whole mission in life is dedicated to that one case and getting it through. While these other cops are like, alright, let's go do our job. Dude, my back is killing me. It's because you have your wallet in your back pocket, you idiot. It's just adding in those little extra tidbits is so these people are human and they're not just cold bureaucratic machines just out to get the bad guy and complete the mission.
Bayliss and Pembleton, they argue like a married couple, don't they?
Oh my god, that's $6. It was just $6 that Frank Pembleton wanted from Bayliss. Just wanted his $6 for the taxi ride. That's such a small amount of money.
That's like $20 today. You don't know, man.
Still, yeah, I guess, but it's still a sandwich. It's free lunch. That's what it is. That's what he's arguing.
Yeah.
And then there's the moment when they're riding in the car after talking to the parents separately, and Bayliss mentions that the wife offered him coffee, and Pembleton's like, well, why didn't you get me any? And Bayliss says, well, I was just being polite. That's the only reason I drank it. And Pembleton says, oh, as long as you get yours.
Then they launched into a double conversation where Pembleton was talking about, again, I think the $6, and then Bayliss was talking about dying on life support. Once Bayless started talking about $6, Pebble started talking about how horrible it would be if he had to kill his son.
I think part of the friction in that partnership is that the series starts where Pembleton, he's a lone wolf. He doesn't like having a partner. Bayless is forced on him. That's how their whole relationship starts. And they do become closer, but there's always that element that I think Pembleton always wishes he could just do it by himself. Max, how well does the episode function as a blind watch?
Pretty great, actually. I didn't need any other context. I didn't need to know anything else about anyone. Jumping right into it, and then just watching these people, I felt like I learned enough to keep up. There was no struggle on my end.
And of course, I picked A Doll's Eyes to target your position as a father of young kids. The Garbrechts in the hospital waiting room as Patrick is in surgery right after the shooting. Were you feeling anything?
A little bit, yeah. I've kind of been in that situation before, actually. Not necessarily the whole surgery thing, but just in a waiting room, just waiting to find out if there's any good news or bad news.
It got pretty emotional. Like, the dad kept blindly talking about, why is any of this happening? My son's going to be fine. I was like, oh no. He's already in denial. He's already in the stage of grief.
Next moment, Pembleton asks for Patrick's clothing from the shooting, and Mrs. Garbrecht reacts to watching the doctors perform tests that confirm her son is brain dead.
Not as much for me. I don't know why it didn't really keep me in tune. Maybe part of me just started trying to block it out. I was like, yeah, that's never going to happen to me, or I don't ever want it to happen to me, so I didn't want to think about it. So I just started maybe emotionally shutting down because of it.
Fair reaction.
I'd say almost the same, not as much as the last.
Yeah, that makes sense. You start to get inured to it.
Okay, you run down the lead on the reporting guy. I'll get the clothes.
All right. Now, you'll be waiting for me here, right?
Right here.
Right here, there.
Right here.
Okay.
Here.
No, nobody told us that the clothes were evidence.
Well, someone in ER should have.
And nobody in this whole hospital knows that.
These things happen. Believe me, we're not happy about this mix-up.
I already washed them, and they were just rags from the way that they cut them off Patrick.
Ma'am, I need these for my investigation.
I put them away.
I need you to give me these clothes.
I can't.
You have to.
I have to? Let me tell you what I have to do today, okay? I have to go in there, and I have to watch the doctors pinch Patrick's legs. I have to watch them stick pins at the bottom of his feet. I have to watch them pour cold water, first in his right ear, then in his left, to see if his eyes move today. Then I have to hear them tell me that they don't. His eyes don't. I hear them say this. Nothing else can be done. This is just a little boy, and they have to say this about him. You have to have his clothes. You have to know what we saw yesterday. I have to remember Patrick standing there. He has to see the dinosaurs. He has to go to that window. It's always one more minute. He always has to do what he wants. And then he falls down, and I think he's just teasing me. He's going to get up in a minute, and I'm going to yell at him to just get up and not get dirty. I want to see him get up from his own bed. Do I have to think that he can lay there like this for another 50 or 60 years? Do I have to think whether this is what he wants?
Moment 3. Bayless and Pembleton go to the Garbrecht house, and I mentioned they have those separate conversations with each parent regarding what to do with Patrick becoming an organ donor.
Oh, yeah, that started getting to me just because kind of like, I don't like it, but gotta be done. And yeah, it's a bit of a touchy subject in that sense, like, oof.
I think it got to me, because on paper, help out all those other kids, but emotionally, that's still their child. Is there reason to give up hope at that point? That's an impossible choice.
How much time even passed?
What, like 48 hours? Less than a week?
Is that enough time?
Yeah, exactly.
The doctors, once they say he's brain dead, but then once you do decide to donate the organs, you are basically saying, okay, he's never going to get better. We're going to kill him.
It's not even, oh, he's dead. Because his heart's still beating, his lungs are still working, everything else is still working. It's not even dead.
Yeah, but I mean, there's been stories where, oh, he's in a coma, he's brain dead, and then he wakes up 5 years later.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of happy endings in Homicide.
No.
It's a pretty dour show, isn't it, Max?
You guys just went straight to chopping him up. God damn.
The dad brings that up, too. Conversation with Pendleton, talking about, like, what if we do pull the plug and then tomorrow there's a cure?
And then finally, the moment that I think wrecks everybody, it got to me all right. The last scene between the Garbrooks as Patrick gets taken off life support.
Carrying your dead child as he just flatlines? Ugh.
Well, doesn't one of them say he's warm?
And then how the doctors immediately try to rush in. It's like, guys, come on! Jesus!
Is there anything here, Max, that you do to make the episode stronger?
I feel in a way the dad did kind of cover it a bit, where he was like, I hope the guy fights back. I hope he puts up a struggle with a gun. I hope he gives you a reason to shoot him. So I felt like that actually added exactly what I would need in this kind of story, because there's been stories of dads who go out and do stuff like that, actually. Go get revenge. So it makes sense.
That goes into the investigation part of the story that I think was super simple. They grill a suspect and that leads to the shooter. I get it couldn't be complicated since that would have taken away from the parent's screen time, but I almost don't want to see any of it from the cop's perspective. Just keep it on the parents the whole time.
I was actually wondering about that. Does this show normally show like the victim's side that often or that much of a focus?
They do it a couple times, but that's not the formula, no.
Okay, so this was like a unique episode in that sense.
They were still a procedure, but they still had a lot of outside-the-box episodes. One of them took place entirely in the interrogation room. You remember that episode?
That was good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we could move on without mentioning Richard Belzer as Detective John Munch, a guy who's been in a lot of different shows connecting multiple universes. This show is directly tied to The Wire. John, did you recognize the black dude, the cop that was complaining about the ice? That he shows up, I want to say, in the series finale of The Wire. Because in this show, he co-owns a bar with some of the other officers. And in The Wire, he's the owner of a bar, and I think it's the same character.
Yeah, I did recognize him.
Did you recognize John Belzer, the guy with the glasses, Max?
Guy with the glasses.
Yeah, he was on Law & Order SVU.
You know what? That weird creepy guy who was talking about those tickets that were really hard to get?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he looked kind of familiar. And the whole time I'm like, man, he looks like a bit of a creep. He sounds like a creep right now, too. What the hell?
Oh, man. Oh my god. There was an episode of SVU where he needed to go undercover in a pedophile ring, and all he did was take off his glasses.
It's like, you were born for the parts.
Yeah, I'm never going to forget that. He had to like, get in an Ambler or something, and so he just took off his glasses and smiled, and they're like, perfect pedophile, go get him.
He goes to the makeup artist, the costumers. He's like, so guys, what are we going to do to make me look like a pedophile? Yoink.
Yeah.
No, really, what are we going to do? No, that's it, Richard. That's all we need to do. You're perfect.
We got a busy day. Get out, Richard.
Our final emotional cannonball shot across Max's bow is the series Lost, giving us a tale of survivors post-plane crash on a deserted, supernatural, freaky island with a smoke monster and maybe Jesus in the last couple seasons. I still don't know. In Season 1's Do No Harm, spinal surgeon Jack Shepard is trying to save fellow survivor Boone's life after an accident on the island. While in flashbacks, we see Jack having trouble writing his vows, about to wed a former patient named Sarah. Max, do you remember anything about the show in its initial run?
Vaguely, because I was watching the show as I started going to night school. I just couldn't find the time to watch everything. I would have to rush home and be like, what did I miss? And at one point I just lost interest after like the third season, I want to say. But no, I more or less remember the first two seasons somewhat well.
The name of the show is basically a meta joke. because it's so convoluted at a certain point you go, huh? I'm lost.
But it's true, though, because the writers had no idea what they were doing.
Sounds like you remember it.
Nah, I didn't like it. I do remember it. I hated it.
At the time, did you try to watch it, or was it only later when somebody suggested you watch it?
I think I tried to watch some episodes at the time, and it felt like the writers didn't know what they were doing. They had no idea. I remember when the finale finally came on and every single person on the planet was disappointed. There wasn't a person whose face I didn't laugh in.
I was hooked at the beginning, though I was interested far more in the survivors than the big mystery. It was to be the first of many times J.J. Abrams produced something that was going to let me down. This was a few years before his Star Trek reboot. I lost a lot of goodwill toward the show in the third season when all the harebrained science. If anyone's interested in watching it now, I'd advise you stop after the second season and then write a fanfic ending, because I guarantee it'll be better than how they ended it. Do you agree, John?
100%.
Which of the plane crash survivors do you like the most, from what you know of the first episode, or the season, or specifically this episode?
Big fan of Daniel Day Kim, Jun So Kwan in the show. I did make a joke while watching it. I was like, wife, that's what Frank looks like.
Maybe 10 years ago.
10 minutes ago, don't sell yourself short. Him and the Hobbit, Dominic Monaghan, Charlie Pace, just because he was a Hobbit, so he had all that goodwill for me, and then Jin Soo did not have to deal with everybody else's BS because he didn't speak their language.
You have such a geek brain, John. Every time you watch something, can all you see are other roles they've been in?
Especially for this, it just makes it funnier.
Definitely now I don't have a favorite, but I can tell you who I grew to despise. It was Jack and all his crying. It's okay when you're watching television I've assigned you guys, but not when you're the leader of a group of survivors should you be crying as much as he was.
Right?
Frank, we need to go back to the island. We have to go back.
And 20 years later, not thinking about the whole series, but just this first season, Max, do you think it's aged well?
I think it still kind of holds up. I mean, especially if you're going to a blind and you're like, what is this mystery? They always do that previously on Lost recap at the beginning of every episode where, in a way, if you know what you're watching, they're kind of spoiling some parts. But at the same time, if you're blind into it, it does catch you up on a lot, and it's great to throw it out there just so you know what's going on. Maybe watching up to like the end of the second season is a great way to end it. Because, yeah, after that point, it stops holding up. It just becomes frustrating, and it's not worth investing your time and life into it.
Well, that's when they explicitly get into time travel, and this show is not supposed to be Doctor Who.
It was great early on because, again, in the sense that the writers work shooting blindly, there were times when they had scandals with some of the actors and they had to write them off, and they did it really quickly. That's something I could appreciate from the show. It was fluid and kind of organic.
That was fun that they would kill people off every season. Maybe a precursor to The Walking Dead, where major characters that you know the writers have set something up for in the future, but no, people like Mr. Echo, that big black dude, he's gone. I forgot how much shaky cam this show employs. So gosh darn frustrating. Sit still and let me look at stuff in the image. Fire the camera operator with Parkinson's. I think shaky cam goes back to the 90s. Homicide definitely used it. Then going into the 2000s, it was the standard for shows like The Shield. Gross stylistic choice when it's not saved for choice moments.
It's, I think, a money-saving thing, because it's quicker to just have a guy run in on a camera and do a quick focus check versus the still camera, you gotta set everything up. Whereas the shaky cam, you just roll with it and see what happens.
Oh yeah, it's like you barely even need to block the scene.
It's definitely a production time saver.
Where should I stand? It doesn't matter. We're barely going to be able to notice it's you anyway.
Yeah.
Unless they freeze frame it.
Don't worry about it. I'll be looking at your shoulder.
And it felt particularly out of place when they bring Boone in and Jack is prepping to, I don't know, consider doing some kind of surgery, and he's there with Sun acting as the nurse. And it's so frenetic and so shaky, like there's a volcano going off on the island or maybe an earthquake. It's like, oh, wait a second. Why is this so energetic? Nothing's really going on here. And I picked Do No Harm to appeal to you, Max, as a husband. Although I mistakenly believed it was this episode that Jack's marriage falls apart. Oops. That doesn't come until season 3. Did any of the following moments touch you guys? The first one, Sarah's toast to Jack at the rehearsal dinner.
No.
Same. No.
Jack at the hotel pool with his dad talking about having cold feet.
Also no.
No. From a dumb joke, literal perspective, his feet were in the pool, so that's on him.
I know. I had to stop myself from writing that into the description. Number 3, Jack explaining to Sarah during the exchange of vows that he didn't fix her. It was actually the other way around. She fixed him.
No.
Nope. That's the dumbest wedding vow ever.
I was there, Max, and I have to attest to have forgotten. Did you guys write your own vows?
Oh no, we didn't do any vows or anything like that. We had somebody who would just talk about us and our history, and that was about it. Laura started turning up. I was like, oh, okay.
We already established that she married an android.
A heartless android.
Except for maybe a dribble of engine oil leaking out of your eye. She wasn't going to get any tears from you.
Pretty much.
I'm going to say out of these 3 shows, this one felt the most soap opera-y, as having just all these things thrown at you, almost like along with the kitchen sink.
Sounds desperate.
Yeah, the show definitely turned desperate. Number 4, when Sun tells Jack, "You can't save him," referring to Boone, and Jack says, "Don't tell me what I can't do."
I felt more anger at that point. Dude, f*** you.
That's feeling something. I'll take it. How about you, John?
Same. Instead of letting him die, he's prepared to torture him to death.
Yeah, he goes off into mad scientist territory.
Pump him full of my blood, cut his leg off, and maybe punch him in the face.
Number 5, resetting Boone's leg, and the classic silhouette screaming behind a curtain moment.
Okay, that one actually was a little tougher. Yeah, that pain, all that suffering. Ugh, poor guy. You know what I think it is? I think it's because all the earlier moments are concerning Jack, and I do not care about Jack.
Hear, hear.
I barely knew Boone for like maybe a minute, and I feel like he's a more compassionate character to relate to.
And there's really no setup for Boone in this episode. All his character stuff, it's in the episode previous to this one. So I think it's just the visceral nature of imagining yourself in his position.
Come on, out of the way! I need room. Keep him steady.
Boone, can you hear me? It's okay, we're catching.
What happened?
Fell down a cliff.
But he was with Laura. Keep him steady now.
Jack, his leg.
Bleeding a lot. I know, he's bleeding. Keep him steady, damn it. You gotta press harder than that, Kate.
I'm trying.
All right, slow now. Slow and gentle. Easy. Son, pair of scissors in the second drawer of the cart. Second drawer! Put diapers in the first drawer. Son's gonna switch places with you. Son, I need...
Yes, I understand.
Hurley, grab me that first class seat from up there. Also, I need that mesh. We need to create some sort of sterile... Hurley, I swear to God, if you faint...
No, first class mesh. I'm cool. Lord and him.
Get to the beach. Ransack Sawyer's stuff. I want his alcohol. Rubbing, scotch.
Jack, what's going on?
His lung just collapsed.
Okay. 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 Good, Boone. Good, Boone. That's good. Good job. All right. You're gonna put a tube in that and you're gonna be just fine. What are you still doing here? The alcohol, Kate. You want him to live? Get to the beach, now!
And how is it that later on Jack mentions that Boone's leg has been crushed, but he didn't notice that as he was resetting it?
Usually if it's crushed, you'd see more signs of it being compressed than just, oh, it looks a little broken. Oh, what a terrible doctor. That's why he became a spinal cord surgeon and not an actual doctor.
The first lady he fixes, he marries. Even if it is the mom from Modern Family.
Also on ABC.
Good for ABC for keeping her employed, because she's funny.
It's like when he was resetting that leg, why wasn't he hearing, like, little pebbles? Why is this so jelly-like? How do I even reset something where it seems like the bone's been pulverized?
Not a good doctor.
It feels like I'm trying to reset a sandbag. That moment definitely got to me, as did this next moment, when Jack's about to amputate Boone's leg, and he wakes up in time to say, "No thank you." Then Boone says that he's letting Jack off the hook to save his life.
Not really. Not for me.
From a TV perspective, they were never going to show that, so it's just like, okay.
I was almost watching it as a totally new viewer, and I was hoping Jack was going to come to that realization that he can't amputate this dude's leg using a cargo door.
There's no way that's going through the first time.
But he was going to. If Boone hadn't woken up and said, "Don't do it," he was totally going to do it, wasn't he? What an asshole.
The guy would have bled to death from that.
It broke through this tree stump. Good enough for me.
The episode title is meant to be ironic.
Do no harm. Torture this guy would have been better for everybody if we just finished him as soon as he showed up.
And this last one didn't affect me at all, but I figured I'd include it to see if it affected you guys. Claire's baby delivery.
No, not really for me. I mean, I've been through two of them. I was more or less critiquing the situation. That baby is not a fresh baby, I can tell. There's not enough jelly on it.
It wasn't covered in sand after either. Like, it should have been like a sandy baby.
John, how would you improve the episode besides canceling it?
Maybe, I don't know, have an idea of where you're going to begin with.
I was making a joke there, but now I think about it, how happy would the producers have been canceled? And everybody's asking them, but what's going to happen? They're like, we totally thought it out. We knew, but they canceled it. We can't tell you now.
Cancel. We can't tell anybody. Oh, well.
What if they did that old-fashioned thing where they were like, well, and then a cliffhanger, but depending on what number you dial, you can determine what happens next week.
Call-in vote. Oh, God.
That would have been the same amount of forethought that they put into it.
That's how the second Robin got murdered.
Version 2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason Todd for comic book fans. The writers must have been pissed when ABC did something that they typically didn't do back then in network TV. I think it was in the 4th season, at the end of the 3rd. They told the press that we're going to end the show with season 6. So now the writers know when exactly it's going to end and they can craft the perfect finale. And the writers are like, "Oh my God, you called our bluff. Can't you still cancel it?"
We don't know where we're going.
John, do you remember when the show ended? And I wasn't enthusiastic about it, but I did watch the finale pretty close to when it aired. They got a lot of hate, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. I remember videos on the internet where people were bringing up every plot line that never got resolved, and these videos were 10 minutes long. Some guy did like a hoedown musical song video of every single plot line. It was like a 5-minute song, and he literally spent like 5 seconds on each plot line.
Jesus.
The way I would try to improve this episode, because it is such a soap opera show, it reminds me what frustrated me throughout its run. This should be Jack trying to save Boone and the flashbacks to Jack's nuptials. Instead, we get a Saeed and Shannon scene that doesn't do anything. Claire's pregnancy. I understand it's an ensemble, but so often they split too much of the screen time between all of them. The A story barely feels like one. John, do you think Jack and Boone get much more of the episode than Kate and Claire?
No, it really felt like Claire's episode. Because I remember seeing the opening credits and not remembering Evangeline Lilly. Is that however you say her name?
Evangeline Lilly?
Evangeline? Okay.
Yeah. Evangelion
Lilly. That's that dyslexia coming in. I'm just like, those are too many letters I've never seen together.
There you go, mixing your geek references.
Yeah. Wait, should that pregnant lady being given birth by a giant 50-foot robot that hates mankind? It did feel like the Claire and Kate episode, and then in the background, Dr. Jack was torturing Boone.
You can't have two A stories. And it doesn't help when I loathe half the cast. Kate, Claire, Charlie, Shannon, all wastes of space. And like I said, eventually I hated Jack too. I remember back then I did kind of like Boone, but he gets killed off in this episode, so whatever.
He got what the getting was good.
What about Sawyer?
I didn't dislike him, but he didn't really come into focus for me until maybe season 5 or 6, and by that point the show was so stupid that I liked the character, but I didn't like the show he was in anymore.
Wasn't he, like, possessed by a god or something at one point?
What?
Something dumb. I remember someone trying to explain the end plot to me.
All I know about Sawyer was that wasn't his real name, he was a con artist, and he was out trying to kill the guy who he thought was his dad. I don't know if he was or wasn't. And he eventually killing him, that's it. That's all I remember about Sawyer.
I remember he eventually becomes a good guy, where at the beginning he's more roguish.
Yeah.
And then Locke, they mention him, but he's not in this episode. I know he gets possessed by some demon or devil or something.
Weird stuff. I remember someone was explaining one of the later plot lines to me, and I was just like, wait, this is the exact plot line of a real Ghostbusters episode.
It's a better show.
Way better.
And now, the final portion of the show, TLDL, Too Long Didn't Listen, where I'm going to ask you guys some questions, try to give me short, sweet answers. Max, who was the best supporting cast today?
I'm going to say Daniel Day Kim.
Oh, so Lost.
He's like the only one that's memorable to me is like, oh, he actually did stuff and he was there. He was fun.
I think the actual truer explanation, Max, is that you miss me, so you went with the guy that reminded you most of me.
I'm even trying to learn your language, Frank.
Oh, you're just doing that for your minders at the factory.
Yes.
Whoa. It's getting dark.
John, which episode had the best production design?
I don't want to give Lost any credit for anything positive. It was just in the woods. Screw it, Little House on the Prairie. It's a period piece. So they're getting those props.
Max, which one was the most engaging story?
Little House on the Prairie.
You hear that, Dad? Vindicated.
Oh, wow. This is becoming a therapy episode.
Yeah, Max, that's what you have to look forward to. Getting into fights with your kids about shows.
Oh, we already do.
John, what's the better performance? Listen carefully. Michael Landon as Charles Ingalls, Marcia Gay Harden as Mrs. Garbarek, or Matthew Fox as Jack Shepherd?
Out of spite, I want to say it's a tie for Little House on the Prairie and Homicide Life on the Streets. But I'm going to give it to Michael Landon.
That shows how underwhelming the Jack character was in an episode that featured his flashbacks.
Yeah.
Max, better scene partners. Mr. Ingalls and Albert, Detectives Bayless and Pembleton, or Jack and Son?
Oh, the detectives. Hands down.
John, which show felt like it aged the worst?
Ah.
Come on, say it.
From a production point of view, it was going to be Homicide, but because it went so poorly south, lost.
Speaking of Homicide, what's up with the percussion soundtrack? I wasn't jiving with that, were you, John?
Yeah, it was borderline. It was almost Seinfeld-esque.
Yeah, it was. It reminded me of Birdman. I was waiting to see the drummer in the background. John again. Best villain. Mr. Quinn, the healthcare system, or Jack needlessly torturing Boone before giving up on trying to save him.
So, the healthcare system.
Healthcare strikes again. I'm gonna just go with Jack. He had a sadist agenda, and he was going unchecked.
And last question for you, Max, to round us out. If you were forced to sit down and watch one of these shows with the family, let's say the boys are in high school at this point, which do you subject them to?
Oh man, that depends. Do I want them to actually love me, or do I want to torture them?
You want them to love you.
Oh god, alright. I feel like it's a toss-up between Little House on the Prairie and Homicide. I'm gonna lean more toward Homicide because I'll probably be more jiving with that.
Because it's edgier?
Yeah. A little kid dies. How cool is that?
Check this out, boys.
That could have been you.
Could have been you. You could have been the shooter, too. Who knows?
You've reached the end of this episode of The Screen Companion. Thank you for listening.